Welcome everyone, Farmer Cop here. This is going to be a guide to growing potatoes in Farming Simulator 25. We're going to cover this for all platforms, so whether you play on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC and Mac, this will work for you. I also do tend to talk a little fast, so if you need to slow me down, you can do that down below using the YouTube controls to slow down the speed of the video. This is also base game, no mods. This is just base game equipment. We're not going to talk about mods or anything like that. As the game progresses, there will be mods that will come out to make some of this easier or different, so just be aware of that. However, if you're playing with base game, this will work, and in general, most mods in the future should work with this same process. I also do have time codes down below. We are going to cover some specific things, so if you wanted to skip to a specific topic, you can do that. The topics we're going to cover are prepping the field for planting potatoes, caring for potatoes, harvesting potatoes, and then what to do with potatoes after you harvest them. So we're going to cover all of that in this video. If you just need part of that, again, there's time codes down below. And also make sure you guys check out the comment section to make sure there's nothing in the first pinned comment. If I put something in a pinned comment, it means that I missed something or there's something important that changed or the game was updated. I do add and change those and adjust those as needed, or at least as much as I can to make sure I stay on top of it. So just be aware of that. Make sure you check that out. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So field prep is kind of the first step for this. So we need to get our field ready to go. We're going to use this small little field here. If you've seen any of my other crop guides, it's the same exact field, and the field prep is already done. But let's talk about what we need to do if it isn't done. So if you harvested something off of this field, or there was already something in this field, or was in a different state than like plowed or cultivated, we need to do something to take care of it. So one thing is we need to either plow it or cultivate it. So if we go in the store, down here we have a few different things under soil cultivation. We have plows, cultivators, disc harrows, power harrows, subsoilers, and spaders. You have to use one of those on the field if it needs field prep. I will put a card up on your screen right now to check out my complete guide to field prep if you wanted to know what the specific differences between all of these are. However, there's one major difference. Some of them will take care of the plowing state and some will not. So if you are playing with periodic plowing turned on, which I'll show you that in a second, and the field requires plowing, and that's what it says in the menu, which I'll show you in a second as well, you need to either use a plow, a subsoiler, or a spader. These three will not take care of that plowing state, so you need to use one of these three items here. Now, if we go into, well, let's go into our settings here. If you're down here playing with periodic plowing required, if that's turned on, we need to take care of that. We also need to take care of fieldstone. If this is turned on, we need to make sure that we're not leaving any fieldstone, and we need to take care of that. And the last thing, if you have lime turned on, we're going to talk about taking care of lime as part of the field prep as well. So these are kind of the three things we're going to cover. If we go up to our map, talking about, let's go to soil composition. I have needs plowing selected here, so you can see our little field right here does not have any highlights on it, so it doesn't need plowing. If it had this red highlight on it, you need to take care of the plowing state, which would be done with either a subsoiler, a plow, or a spader. However, ours does not require it, and if you have, again, that turned off, you don't need to worry about it. So if we did need to do something to this field, we wouldn't have to plow it. We could just use a cultivator or something on it. Now, I will note as well, if you are going to do potatoes repeatedly on a specific field, every time after you harvest potatoes, they are going to require plowing, whereas most crops only require plowing every 3 harvests, so just be aware of that. Now, next thing, again, I said about stones. If we have stones on the field, which I don't think any of these fields actually have stones on them because it was turned off before. Yep, none of them do. But if you have yellow little dots in the field, that'll be small stones, orange is medium, and red is large stones. The stones won't affect your yield, but you need to remove them in order to prevent any extra damage to your equipment as it works on the field. So just basically make your equipment wear and tear a little bit quicker than it would without that on there. So that's what stones are necessarily for, to get rid of there. So that's why you want to get rid of those. Now, lime. Lime will have this kind of tealish tint on it. If you have that over top of your field, you need to lime it. Ours does not require lime. To spread lime, you need to come into here, go down to yield improvements, go into fertilizer spreaders. This is the only base game piece of equipment that will spread lime. There's lime right there, so you need to buy this or lease this, and then you need to buy lime, which is located here or here under the consumables, and then you can spread that on the field. Now, if you have stones in the field, you can use a stone picker to collect those off of the field to get rid of them. If they're any size stones, you can use a field roller after you plant. You can use one of these rollers down here after you plant, not before, after you plant, to push the small stones back in the ground. So these will be effective towards small stones and give you a little bit of a yield bonus as well. So those are kind of the things you need to talk about when it comes to field prep. Our field is good to go, so let's go ahead and move on to seeding. Now, the thing with seeding as well, normally you have direct drills and stuff like that. We don't have the ability to do that with potatoes. Potatoes require specialized planters, and none of which of them are direct drills. So if we go in the store and we scroll down here, we're going to go down to root crops and then go to potato planter. So these are the 3 base game potato planters here. This one here is $69,500 to buy. It works at 3 meters, 7 miles an hour. They all work at 7 miles an hour. You have these two, which are 3 meters. This one's 6 meters wide in terms of its working. The only difference between these two is this one does add fertilizer, also requires a little bit more horsepower. This one's a little bit big, a little bit beefy, a little bit difficult to kind of run on a field. This one's obviously a lot easier to run on a field. And then my favorite one is this one, because it has a 6 meter wide working width. Now, again, this is the only one that does fertilizer, so you need to buy solid fertilizer for it. If you want to put fertilizer down while you're rocking and rolling, you can do that using this. However, the other two will not put down fertilizer. So if you want to put down fertilizer as you're going, this is a great one to use, and it'll save you one step when we get to the field or crop care step, which we'll talk about next. So yeah, just use any one of these. We're going to use this right here, and you can see down here it takes potatoes or seeds. If we come out of this menu here, if we go over to consumables right next to the root crops, we have pallets of potatoes. Now they are quite expensive, $950 for 1,000 liters. If you actually look in the store at what we're going to sell potatoes for later, there they are right there. We're not going to get anywhere near $1,000 or $900 per 1,000 liters. So we are taking a loss by buying them in here like this. After you do your first potato harvest, keep some potatoes aside to fill your potato planters up with, which you can use like a front loader to scoop them into your potato planter, something like that. That's a lot cheaper. That way you don't have to worry about it, because potatoes do require a lot of seeds. Now, if you look, remember back here, they also do say that they can take seeds as well, which you can buy regular seeds. If we go up here towards seeding, go to categories here, we have different types of seed pallets here. Even with this one, which is a little bit cheaper than those ones because it gives you a little bit more, this is more expensive than buying the potatoes. So I recommend using potatoes still in your planter. But let's go ahead and hop over to, I have this guy right here all hooked up with a potato planter here. Now, you can again put regular seeds. So I have a pallet of regular seeds. If I pull up next to it, I'm gonna hit R to go ahead and put those in. And you can see the help menu in the upper left-hand corner. I have that open. If you're on PC, you can turn it on and off with F1. If you're on console, go into the settings here, go to general settings, and make sure this help window here is turned on. You're also going to want your interactive zone markers, info trigger, and info box. You want all of this stuff turned on, at least when you're first starting to get going with playing the game. I keep them on at all times because I think they're helpful just to kind of know that stuff. So make sure you have that stuff on if you're looking for the controls for that. Now, I also have a couple pallets of potatoes right here. So if I pull up next to these guys, I can hit R and I can refill the planter now with these potatoes. Now, the potato planter does hold quite a few potatoes, but you'll see when we start to plant that it does go through those quite rapidly. So that's why it can be a little expensive to plant potatoes, especially if you are using seeds, because you're going to use a lot of seeds. Now that I have it full of potatoes, we'll at least have some potatoes in there. I can hit X to unfold it, so it'll start unfolding as I go out to the field right here. And then once it's unfolded, I'm ready to plant. Now, the other thing to consider when planting is this crop calendar right here. I have seasons turned off, which means I can plant and harvest whenever I want. If I go down to the menu and I go into game settings, if I go to right here and I turn seasonal growth to yes, you don't want it on pause. That means nothing will ever grow. But if I have it turned to yes and I go back here, you can see I can't just plant stuff whenever I want. If I go back down here, potatoes, I can plant potatoes in March and April, and I can harvest them in August and September. So right now it wouldn't let me plant potatoes. And also too, if you have seasonal growth like this turned on, after you get past September, your potatoes will wither and you won't be able to harvest them. So we're gonna turn it to no, just to make our life a little bit easier. But now that our planter is opened up, I can hit V to lower it down. And then as I start going through, you don't have to turn it on, it's already on. As I start going, you can see down there, bottom right-hand corner, look how fast those potatoes are going down. We've already used 50 liters. Coming up on using 100 liters here of potatoes, and there's 100 liters that we've used. So it does take quite a few potatoes or seeds to plant, so just be aware of that. But yeah, that's how you get it all planted. And then once you do plant it as well, one last thing to note, when you go and do the menu here, you can go over to growth and you can see that this is now light green. As it gets darker and green, that means it's getting closer and closer to being ready to harvest. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish planting potatoes in this field, and then I'm going to bring you guys back in after that so we can talk about crop care. All right, our potatoes are planted. It takes a while to get them planted, but they are ready to go. And I will note as well, if you're wondering, it did take, just to plant this small little field here, it took 1,671 liters of either seeds or potatoes, depending on what you put in your planter. So again, like I said, it takes quite a bit. But let's talk about crop care now. So we need to fertilize this field twice to get the best yield. Now, since we did not use a potato planter that also fertilizes, we can fertilize right away, which I'm just going to use solid fertilizer right here to go over the field. But if we had used a potato planter that fertilizes, we'd have to wait till the next month to put our second layer down. But you can see now if we go into the menu here, soil composition. Now the two things we're going to focus on here in crop care is weeds and fertilization. So you can see this light blue is one state of fertilizer, this dark blue is two states. We have none right now. As we start to go over it with solid fertilizer spreader here, I'm going to hit B to turn it on there and see I'm spreading solid fertilizer. And I'll show you the stuff that can fertilize in the store here in a second. I do have very specific videos out on all of this on my channel if you wanted like more information on a specific topic, like just fertilization. But as you can see now, we are putting on our first layer of fertilizer. Now, before we can put down the second layer of fertilizer, we need to skip forward a month. That's just the way it works. We can't put down two layers of fertilizer in 1 month in general. There are ways around that, but that's not the point of this video. To talk about ways to get around that. It's just, in general, you'll need to skip a month. So, I mean, it's no big deal, really, to skip a month to do it. But ways we can fertilize, if we go into the store here, sorry. Let's go here. Yield improvements. You can use one of these sprayers to spray down liquid fertilizer. You can use a manure spreader to put down manure from like one of your cows or something like that. You can use the solid fertilizer spreader, or the same thing that'll put down the lime. You can put use any of these to put down solid fertilizer, or you can use a slurry tanker like one of these in here to do slurry or digestate to put down a layer of fertilizer. Now, if you need to buy those different materials, we can buy solid fertilizer in these two configurations here. They're the same price, just different, basically different holders for them. Then we have two brands of liquid fertilizer that are the same, just whatever brand you decide to choose. And you can buy the liquid fertilizer there in the store. So that's how we deal with liquid fertilizer. Now, we do need to deal with weeds. And so if we come up here, you can see down the bottom right-hand corner, it says weeds growing. So when we come in next month, there are going to be weeds in this field, and we'll talk about how to deal with those. Now, if you are just going to do potatoes over and over again, the good news is when you use a plow on your field, this doesn't work for spaders or subsoilers. Since you have to, if you have periodic plowing turned on, since you have to plow every time after your harvest, if you use a plow every time, you'll never have to deal with weeds because this prevents weeds from showing up on your field. So that's the nice thing about that. But I'm going to go ahead and skip through the night here, and then we will do our second layer of fertilizer, and then we will talk about weeds. All right, a month has gone by, and I'm already putting down our second layer of fertilizer here. If you look in the menu, you can see 2 layers of fertilizer, and as I progress, we're getting that second layer on. You also can see the potatoes start to grow, and you can see the weeds in between the field. If I could actually say words, that would be great. But you can see the little weeds growing in there as well. They're kind of the little plants that aren't part of the rows that kind of stand out a little bit. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the weeds that we see in there. So, but anyhow, yeah, fertilized. Now, if we turn that off, turn weeds on, you can see we have weeds growing. Now, there are a couple different ways to handle weeds. We are going to use specifically a sprayer to handle the weeds, but you can also use a weeder to handle the weeds as well. It does matter what you use compared to the size of the weeds, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So if we come up to the field, down there bottom right-hand corner in the info box, it says weed small. So we have small weeds in this field. If we go in the store, if we go up to, where is it at? Yield improvements, here we are. If we use a sprayer to spray herbicide down, we can kill medium, small, large weeds, doesn't matter. Kill any type of weed. That's what we're going to do here. Now you also have weeders down here. So if you use this guy, this guy, this guy, or this guy, so these 4 here, you have the Gorink, the Einbach, the other Einbach, and the Elmers, they will take care of it. Says down here, weeders pull out small grown weeds. So you can pull out the weeds or the small weeds with that, and then you won't have any weeds in there, which is great. Now this guy right here can take out small and medium weeds, so that's great. But again, if you have large weeds, you can't use anything besides a sprayer. I'm going to turn on my sprayer and start going across it, and you can see the weeds are getting killed off instantly, which is the way it is. We can see that little brown icon there. That means that the weeds are dead. Now, if you use one of the weeders over the field, there's just going to be nothing. It's going to look like this because you've killed all the weeds or you've removed the weeds. But yeah, that's honestly all you have to do for crop care, though. We have taken care of the fertilization, and we are now taking care of the weeds. So once I finish spraying this field, we are done with crop care, and we can move on to harvest. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a break in here, and then I'll bring you guys back in when it's time to talk about harvesting our potatoes. All right, our potatoes are ready to harvest, and you can see they are looking good. Perfect. So if we go on the menu here, we go over to growth. You can see it says remove foliage. Just ignore that. It doesn't actually matter. Now, typically, like for sugar beets, if you watch my sugar beets video, if you have to remove foliage, you have to use a halum topper to get rid of the foliage, or you have to use a big self-propelled harvester like this guy. But for potatoes, it just doesn't matter. I tested it, and I'll show you it doesn't matter. So you don't have to worry about it. You just need to use a potato harvester. But that basically means ready to harvest, so just be aware of that. So the other thing, too, to note is if you are playing a seasons on, like I mentioned earlier, make sure it's the harvest season for your potatoes to be able to harvest them. They won't be ready to harvest outside of that window, so you won't really have to think too much. The big thing is you don't want to harvest them after that because it won't work. They'll be withered if you harvest them outside of the harvest window. So, yeah. But yeah, so you basically have 2 kind of methods for harvesting potatoes. You have a pull behind potato harvester like this one, or you have a big, massive self-propelled one. If we go in the store, there's actually not too many options in here. If we go down to root crops, we go to potato technology. You have these 2 pull behind harvesters. The main difference between these 2, they both require 200 horsepower. This one's a little bit more, but this one holds 12,000 liters. This one only holds 9.6 to 10.7, and you can, adjust that in here as well. It's 10.7, or you can do that. So just, yeah, depends on what you want. Silver edition, sure, whatever you would like to do if you want to change that up. But yeah, so that's the main difference between these 2. they're just both pull behind harvesters. They both work at 1.5 meters, so not very wide, and 6 miles an hour. This guy also 6 miles an hour, but now it is a, where's the width? Oh, it doesn't have the width down there, which is kind of frustrating, but it's probably about 3 meters is what I'd say, maybe 4, probably closer to 4. I mean, as you can see, it's a decent width. It's not crazy wide, but it's wider. And it also holds 22,500 liters of potatoes, which is kind of nice. So if we get into the self-propelled harvester, the nice thing is, all we got to do is hit X to unfold. We got to start it up. Then we got to hit X to unfold it. And then all we have to do is come up to the field once we're unfolded here. Does take it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and start the engine on this guy real quick while we're waiting, because we'll need to use that tractor in a second. But you can see there's quite a bit to it. It's quite a complicated little piece of technology. Hit V to lower it down, B to turn it on, and then as we start driving, you're not going to see potatoes right away because it takes them a little bit to get to the actual grain tank and before it starts counting them. But you can see them moving through the system there, and then now that they're dumping in the grain tank, you can see down below, bottom right-hand corner, our potato numbers are going up. Now, if I turn it off and stop working, you can see the potato numbers are still going up down there, bottom right-hand corner. It's going to keep doing that until all the potatoes have moved all the way through the machine. But as you can see, just doing that one little strip, we actually got quite a bit, 1,300 potatoes. So that's why you want to save some potatoes to replant later on. It works out much better for you. Now, you don't have to worry about crop destruction either. Crop destruction, if you have it turned to, I think I have it turned on. Do I have it turned on? Oh, I had it turned off. Off, on. It doesn't matter. If I hit X to unfold this guy, well, you can see this guy doesn't have narrow tires on it, and I'm driving over the crops, and it's not destroying any of them. So you don't have to worry about them getting destroyed. But you hit X just like the one to turn that on, or excuse me, to unfold that. Then you hit V to lower it down and B to turn it on. And as you can see, it doesn't need a halum topper to remove that. We are harvesting potatoes. Again, it does take them a second to get over to the grain tank. But once they do, and boom, there we go. Now, bottom right-hand corner, you see our numbers are going up, which is sweet. So they're doing their thing. Now, since we know how to harvest potatoes now, what do we do with it? Well, obviously, you can sell the potatoes just like any other crop. I'll put a card up on your screen right now if you wanted more information on that, so you guys can check that out if you wanted more information on selling crops. But it's pretty straightforward. Go in the menu, go here, find potatoes, find a place that's selling them for a good price, take them to said place, and you're good to go. The other thing you can do is actually store them. So you can store them in the railroad silo, which if there is a place that has this little railroad icon that's next to any crop, that means you can store that crop at the railroad silo if it has this little 0 liter mark on the right-hand side here. This will tell you how much you have in storage. So I believe it's 300,000 liters is how much it'll hold. So you can put 300,000 liters in there, but that'll fill up pretty quick. So just be aware of that. You're not going to be able to hold them for very long in there, or you're going to run out of space pretty quick if you put them in there. You also can dump them on the ground. If I hit O to put the pipe out for this, and left control I can just dump them on the ground, and then you can use a front loader bucket or something to scoop them up off the ground, scoop them into your seeders, whatever you need to do. You also can use them in productions, excuse me, so you can use them like in the soup factory to make potato soup. You can use them in the potato chip factory, obviously, to make chips and stuff like that. So there's things you can do with them as well to make a little bit more money. You also can use them in animal feed, so you can feed them to your pigs, which is pretty great. So there you go. That's pretty much everything you need to know about potatoes, though. That is what I have for you guys. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please drop a like down below. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button up on the screen to join the Farmer Cop channel and turn your notification bell so you don't miss any future videos I may post. This has been Farmer Cop. Thank you guys for coming and watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.